we are familiar now with Wagner in terms of their role in the Ukraine war, but what are they doing in Africa? How long have they been there?
They are an extraordinary force in Africa. So they are there. They've been invited by a number of governments that essentially need a bit of shoring up. And so they are invited as a paramilitary force that can essentially help make
and
sure.
And they're paid by the governments, are they?
Exactly.
Right.
But then, because they are not a traditional military force, they then expand from that original security mandate into purely commercial operations. And I think that's where it becomes so fascinating, because if you are Wagner propping up a regime in a sub-Saharan African country, then you can say to that regime, well, we would like a mining concession. What is that government going to do if they depend on you, Wagner, for its survival? So it will give you that mining concession. And that's where I started becoming interested in it, because Western companies were getting concerned that they would
a mining
lose
concession as in what, special privileges?
The right to mine in a particular location.
Right. Which would normally need a permit or special permission or something. They are then just basically given an empty checkbook in terms of being able to then tap into that mining resource.
Exactly. And that means that they can displace whoever has the mining concession at the moment, because what is the government going to do? It's not going to say, well, actually somebody else has that mining concession and we are not going to give it to you. Of course, the government will give it to Wagner, because without Wagner, it would not be in power. So it's fascinating. And it's not just mining concessions, it's things like sugar production as well. And that's where Wagner is unlike anything we have ever seen before in recent memory, in that it's this all-encompassing corporation that does anything from protecting or shoring up the government to trading sugar.
Does it act covertly in African countries, like, Mali is one of them? Are governments shy about admitting using Wagner, engaging Wagner? And do they want to keep that distance from them because it might make them look vulnerable, or as if their own armies or their own people cannot shore up security for them?
I think even if they wanted to be shy about it, it would be difficult, because it's obvious when you get a bunch of beefy Russian guys turning up armed.
So there's not people out there pretending that they're anything other than what they are, effectively.
No, and I think it's also a force multiplier, because if you invite these beefy Russian guys who look like thugs because they are thugs, then of course anybody wanting to or harbouring the ambition of unseating your government will think twice.
Okay, how much has their power spread throughout Africa, and what is the main concern of British MPs here? Is it that those Wagner forces in these African countries will start to link up and actually form a very powerful front of mercenaries, a very powerful front of fighters? What is the sort of most feared end game, I suppose?
I think the fear is that it will Wagner will supplant whatever vestige of traditional governance there is in these countries. At least if you are a local government in one of those countries, you have some sort of claim to power. But Wagner has absolutely no legitimacy as a force in any of these countries. But yet it's so indispensable to the governments that use it.
So these countries are reliant on Wagner.
They are. And on top of that, a major concern is that we don't really know on whose behalf Wagner operates in these countries. Is it purely as a commercial provider of services to these governments, or is it an extended arm of the Russian government? And all of that is so muddled at the moment. We don't know whether Wagner is in cahoots with the Russian government or is trying to unseat the Russian government.
That might be why Putin, went easy on Prigozhin, really, by not dispensing of him, because perhaps Prigozhin is of value to Putin more so in African nations, in Russia's position within African nations as well. And there's an extra layer there too. Do you think any of those nations that engage Wagner's help in Africa are concerned by the fact that Wagner attempted a coup on Russia? Has anyone indicated or shied away from using Wagner or engaging Wagner since then? Do we know?
I'm willing to bet Nigel Farage's entire Coots account that they
He
are
hasn't got one anymore. but
his NatWest account.
Yeah, okay.
That African leaders are concerned because with mercenaries, the thing is, they are easy. It's easy to purchase the services, but they've got no loyalty.
Yeah.
But once you've started purchasing their services, you are stuck. I mean, you're hooked. You can't just tell them go away. And even if you want them to go away, if you started suggesting that, then they may get that
Hit
idea
back.
to stage a coup against you. So it's really difficult. But I think as far as Putin is concerned, it's in his interest to keep them there because Russia, it's in Russia's interest to have many friends outside Europe. Because
to have
in Europe,
stakes in those countries, particularly when they are compromised within Europe. Whilst we've got you, Elisabeth, Times Radio's Frontline series on YouTube, it's hosted by Kate Gerbo, has just spoken to Robert Fox, the defence editor for the Evening Standard. He has a view on how the war in Ukraine may end, and I wanted to run this by you.
The real talking behind the backs of chairs happens at the UN General Assembly in September. This is for the first time where we're beginning to see a clear path. The Foreign Office, the defence and security agencies that look at this, not day in, day out, but hour by hour in Whitehall. So I don't think it will make Zelensky happy, but then Zelensky probably cannot hope with the resources at his disposal to take back the whole of Ukraine. On the other hand, just to balance this is the point that Russia has got to. Russia has made all these extravagant claims, and it's now doing this really rather ridiculous bombing campaign of the ports. But Russia, with the way it is at the moment, stands no chance of totally occupying, in inverted commas, and pacifying the whole of Ukraine.
So he's discussing something of a negotiated end to the war in the autumn. What do you think about that?
Ukraine will never say that it's willing to negotiate a peace settlement that involves anything other than Ukraine getting all of its territory back. If Zelensky were, even if he does believe that that's necessary, he would be foolish. He would be an idiot to suggest such a thing in public because the whole reason that Ukraine is fighting is to get its territory back. And once you start saying, well, we may have to part ways with a particular part of the country, then the motivation among Ukraine's soldiers and indeed the population will go down the drain. And what has been Ukraine's winning formula and indeed its survival in this war is the willingness of ordinary people to put up with just the worst possible conditions, including atrocities.